Welcome to First Bite, our Detroit Lions preview podcast. It is week 5, the schedule game that we may have circled right as the schedule was released. It is indeed Patriots week. Unfortunately, both teams are 1-3, so maybe the hype around this game died down a little bit, but we're going to explore it here on our First Bite podcast. My name is Jeremy Reisman. I am the producer over at Pride of Detroit. You can find me at Detroit Online. With me, as always, my co-host for First Bite, senior editor of Pride of Detroit, at Ryan_POD on Twitter. It's Ryan Matthews. How we doing, buddy?
I'm doing all right, man. I had 24 hours in a 48-hour span at school. It was parent-teacher conferences week, which feels like playing the Patriots. Parent-teacher conferences kind of feels like playing the Patriots. I don't know how to extend that analogy, but it feels right.
We'll let the listeners fill in the blank there as
Perfect.
to what that exactly means. But as always, on our First Bite podcast, we like to bring in a guest from the opposing side of the aisle, let's say. And this week is no different. We got an old friend with us, formerly of Pat's Pulpit, now just Hatin' Ass Brian, as in Hatin' Ass Brian on Twitter. Brian Phillips is with us. Brian, welcome back, buddy.
Hey guys, thank you for having me. Despite my my lone wolf status, my lone wolf ombudsman status on Patriots Twitter, but I feel good. I feel like this is where I can.
I think you muted yourself there at the end there.
Oh,
there we go. Now I can hear you.
Off to a hot start.
No worries. Well, we love Brian because he formerly resided in Michigan, so he kind of has a nice balance of Lions and Patriots point of view here. But speaking of kind of crossing that threshold between Lions and Patriots, it is Matt Patricia week, and I almost want Chris to bleep out the last name there if he could. But obviously, there's been some controversy in New England now with him, I guess, leading the offense. I guess that mystery has been solved. Like, he is essentially being the offensive coordinator just without the title. It was a disaster in the preseason. It was a disaster in training camp, but has it gotten better?
I want to say like the jury's out on specifically on like the regular season, because what they've put on tape when they've had Mac Jones healthy hasn't been that bad, actually. And like they have credit due to them. Like they've made adjustments on the fly. Like week 1 in Miami was a complete disaster and they immediately changed things. Like they're like, oh, okay, we just cannot do these things that we want to do. Now, like there's a lot of talk behind the scenes and people slide into DMs and hashtag sources and things that nobody's been happy since he's been installed. And there are talks like, hey, we didn't run a single play in OTAs. They didn't run plays until I got to camp. Completely unconfirmed, but I've heard it from a couple different people now. And like stuff like that, where it's just like mind-blowing things. The personnel they have doesn't match up with like the outside zone Shanahan stuff. And it's been weird. But then like starting in week 2, they were just like, oh, okay, we're just going to scrap everything and move forward with kind of what we know, what we can do best. And really, it's just been Mac Jones being bad. So,
well, I guess the jury's out still on whether or not Mac Jones, a limited participant in practice. It definitely doesn't seem like he's going to play. The ankle injury seems pretty bad. But I mean, when Mac Jones is in the lineup, is there just nothing that instills any confidence, Brian?
Well, it depends on who's watching the game.
Okay.
It depends on where you come from on this, because I'm someone who's always been skeptical of what he can do, and then he blew everybody's minds with how fast he got up to what I think is his ceiling. I mean, he picked up the speed of the game so fast, but then there has been no progress past the things we already know he can do. Working from the gun, getting the ball out quick, making quick reads. And then this year they've actually asked him to put more on his shoulders. His ADOT is like way up. They're taking shots downfield. They are scheming guys open. Matt Patricia is scheming receivers open, and he's missing them. There's many instances where guys are just running free and we're missing them. We're checking down too soon, and he's making bad decisions with the football. You put that on top of his limited skill set, and it's kind of been a mess. And they just don't have, and they also have weird personnel. Everything about this team is super weird now. It's all weird.
Well, I guess my follow-up question to that is because, there's a high chance that Mac Jones doesn't play in this game, but like, how quarterback proof is this Patriots offense? Like, when the Lions line up against them on Sunday and it's likely that Mac Jones isn't playing, like, are the Patriots capable of being a successful football team without their top signal caller?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. What we saw last weekend, I think, is a perfect example in Lambeau. Bailey Zappi is thrust into action after Brian Hoyer is concussed, and it was
now
basically
on injured reserve.
Yeah, and it was basically go with their bread and butter, gap scheme running, first and second down. Try to work in some play action, try to work in some quick game, but just pound you. And they're cool with playing the limited possessions field position game. It's super boring. It's very annoying. It is not sustainable, but it is how they won the games that they won last year. They had this stretch in the middle of the season after a tough. They started 2-4, and then they won 7 straight games. And at one point, they were the number 1 seed in the AFC, and it was like, what's going on here? It was kind of smoke and mirrors with the schedule, and I think like that's how they won those games. That's what we're gonna see. We're basically seeing the Mac Jones rookie offense going to be happening this weekend, essentially, like we saw in Lambeau last weekend.
Well, yeah, let's dive a little bit into that running game because it's ranked number 1 by DVOA. Despite the fact that I think the longest run of the season is 17 or 18, like they're just picking up 6-7 yards at a time. I'm assuming. Is there a direction or a lineman that they like to specifically run behind, or is it just scheming all over the place?
It really starts with their like interior trio, and that's been like their hallmark forever, right? Even back when you look at like Joe Tooney, David Andrews, Shaq Mason, and now you take Tooney's obviously got that huge contract in KC for the last couple of years, and Shaq Mason was traded. They draft Cole Strange, now he's at left tackle, and they've got Big Mike Onwenu, go blue. I mean, coming from just beautiful stock, a Michigan legend. Mike Onwenu. He's been awesome. And those three just maul you. And since they've gotten back to this gap scheme, the zone scheme that they tried to implement in Miami and all through training camp was just a disaster. They don't have the guys for it. They don't have they want to run 12 personnel. They want to get 2 tight ends on the field, Jonnu Smith, Hunter Henry. It turns out Hunter Henry cannot block to the point where he's been removed from blocking packages. And like Lil Jordan Humphrey is now like a move tight end, and so that's what you're going to see all weekend. And they basically it's all gap scheme, and they'll kill you with power, counter, and duo all game. And they really have not had many negative plays. That's got to be what's contributing to that number 1 DVOA, because they're not going to bust you for 60 like a DeAndre Swift or a Rashad Penny, but they're gonna just pound you all game and then try to work in play action off of that, and hopefully they can hit a shot or two. That's their goal.
Well, I mean, we love Hunter Henry on this podcast. I shouldn't say we, just some of us. One person who's not here and the other person who's laughing right now. But the Patriots spent $1 billion on tight ends, Brian, and it seems like that should be a focal point of their offense. I mean, between Hunter Henry, Jonnu Smith, they're spending an awful lot of money on their wide receivers too. But let's start with the tight ends. Like, what do they want to do, especially with a quarterback who they're probably going to have under some kind of, some kind of limited control over what he'll be able to do? Like, what do you think the tight ends present as a challenge for the Lions when the Patriots aren't on offense?
Well, if I were Bill Belichick, which is always
okay,
totally fair.
Yeah.
I would release Hunter Henry from the roster, and I would play Jonnu Smith 100% of the time.
Okay.
But so again, Brian Phillips, Bill Belichick, kind of,
Different people, I hear.
yeah, there's something going on with Hunter Henry. He's hurt. He's got to be hurt or something, because I mean, he's never been a force in the run game, but he's always been adequate enough. And he's just getting thrown around. Jonnu Smith, on the other hand, is a wrecking ball when he's healthy. Now he was limited today, and like we'll see how he feels. But like the goal needs to be for them to get Jonnu Smith involved more than they are, where they have this like stupid little package of like little chip play action screens to him, or little like he's like the guy who will set up his teammate on mesh across the middle and like spring his teammate for a big gain on like they don't do anything with him, and he's probably their best offensive player, like pound for pound their best offensive player, and they don't utilize him, and they're paying him $50 million to be this like super role player and be the rock, be the blocking half of Rob Gronkowski essentially, but they don't give him any of the route tree. And they've got Hunter Henry out there. They split him out wide and ISO him. Like they think he's some kind of like mismatch. I think he's got like 3 catches on the year or something like that. It's really bad and awkward, and they just don't threaten defenses vertically at all. So I see Detroit having success. I see everybody having success against their offense, essentially.
It's interesting because, they, like you said, they don't bust you for long runs. Kind of up the middle, I think, is where the Lions are they don't have a lot of strength on defense, but I think that's one of them. And you'll hear the Lions say it constantly. Like, they're confident in the way that their defensive tackles are playing. Their big guys up front. It's the edges where they've been getting just absolutely crushed in the run game. And so you think maybe this is a game that Bailey Zappi does have to throw the ball a considerable amount. So let's move to the wide receivers a little bit here, because the Lions secondary has also been getting gashed. But I'm looking at the Patriots roster here. Ty Montgomery's on IR. Tyquan Thornton, their rookie's on IR. Jacoby Myers is dealing with a knee injury. Who's left to really threaten this team downfield?
Well, let me sell you on a gently used Nelson Aguilar.
Sure.
Who I am actually, I've always been like higher on him than like general sentiment. I feel like ever since he came out, obviously he had the drop issues earlier in his career, and then he had a resurgence in Oakland. Or Las Vegas. He comes to New England last year. They are kind of a disaster with the rookie quarterback being super conservative, but he was better than it looked. He was open a lot, and then this year he's actually been killing it. He's been their best pass catching threat. Because he is fast. He's actually fast, and he gets open. But he's got a couple of fumbles this year, things like that. This offense shoots itself in the foot. If I am the Lions, I am putting Jeff Okudah on Nelson Aguilar, and I'm saying take him out of this game because we can do whatever we want to, Devontae Parker. It's not a big deal. Force Bailey Zappi to hit you down the field to guys like Devontae Parker and Hunter Henry, and you're going to have a great day. You're going to love it. But Nelson Aguilar, if he gets cooking, he has the potential to put up a big game against anybody, and I think he's been super underrated because he's been held back the last couple of years by his quarterback play.
Well, I mean, all that sounds good and well, Brian, but we need to come back to what the Patriots have in their backfield. We talked about their offensive line, but we need to talk about their 2-headed monster in Ramondre Stevenson, and we need to talk about Damian Harris. Like, I watched quite a bit of the Packers game last week, and it was just evident that they are most successful, as you say, when they put the ball in the hand of either of those guys. And when it comes to their skill sets, are they able to beat you in the receiving game as well? Are they a threat in that fashion too? One maybe more so than the other.
So we've seen a big progression from Ramondre this year, because he's younger, he's more spry, he's got less miles on the tank, less injuries, and he's nasty, especially for his size. He's got the softer hands of the two. Big shoes to fill, obviously, that James White role. It was going to be Ty Montgomery, but obviously he was put on IR. So they asked Ramondre to step up, but really you'll see them kind of split those duties a little bit. It's been shifting a little more towards Ramondre, but Damian Harris is you're not going to have protection issues. You're not going to he's going to communicate perfectly with David Andrews, and they're going to be able to get protection set. That's going to be a big thing this weekend, especially with Bailey Zappi. That's one thing I'm worried about too, is communication. We're gonna have to see, and I'm glad that this is taking place at home as opposed to at Lambeau, where they did have some issues. But Dame is your steady presence. Damian is your steady presence. He's probably going to get a majority of the goal line work, but it's slowly turning into Ramondre Stevenson's offense. Like, this is going to be his team moving forward, probably the second half of this year, and then going into next year, he's going to be like a workhorse kind of bell cow dude.
Last thing I want to go talk about before we move on to the Lions offense versus the Patriots defense. Right tackle Isaiah Wynn, if I'm not mistaken, got benched last game. There's certainly a bit of concern there. I think the rest of the offensive line has done well in pass protection in general. But on the Lions side, the conversation has been all about, let's move Aiden Hutchinson around. Let's shift some of the things on the defensive line to finally get this pass rush going without blitzing 8 all the time. So how big of a concern is right tackle? Do you have a sense of who's going to play? And if it's not Isaiah Wynn, I'm not entirely sure who their backup is. So tell me about him.
Oh, it's interesting. It's going to be good because I think there's a good chance that we see a move made there. I hope not, because it's been a weird year for him. Yeah, he's had definitely a down year, but he's clearly better than Marcus Cannon. Marcus Cannon is back. Original draft pick, 5th round draft pick in like 1984, which was pretty cool. So it's cool to see him still doing it. But yeah, he's back. He's like on the practice squad, and they're doing like the weekly elevation thing with him now. He's the one who stepped in last week, but man, he cannot move. And the fact that they went to him shows how poorly Isaiah Wynn's been performing. I think either way, I think Aiden Hutchinson is going to have like a hey, welcome to the NFL. Like, all right, the big blowout, breakout game. I know he's got, how many sacks does he have now? Like, he's got like three,
all of them in one half against the Commanders.
I think, but I know that a lot of his sacks and pressures, a lot of football Twitter, film Twitter, are all over him about how quality those are, and I know that might be a testy subject with some. But I think he'll have some quality pass rush sets this snaps this weekend against, regardless of who's at right tackle, and that's gonna be like working with the running. They need to get on the same page with the running backs and who's chipping, and I think we'll see a lot of that because Aiden Hutchinson will give either one of those 2 right tackles some issues.
All right, we're going to take a break here. When we come back, more Hate and Ask Brian from Hate and Ask Brian. Brian Phillips, our guest here, as we preview Lions Patriots Week 5. We'll just say the MP revenge game. We don't need to say his name, right?
No.
All right, we'll be right back.